Oh, there we go. Look who's next to me now. That good-looking son of a gun, the former deputy premier of Alberta, Thomas. No, it's you, buddy.
Oh,
Thomas
it's me. Oh,
McKissick.
okay.
Oh, you look good, buddy. You're in 4K. Your hair looks like amazing. You've got a nice golden hue. Have you been outside? Have you been going
You know,
outside?
I do walks. I have this thing about 10,000 steps a day, and I really try to get it. So my neighbors probably think that I lost my mind, but I just sort of aimlessly walk around the neighborhood and catch a little bit of sun whenever I can.
Yeah. When you aimlessly walk around the neighborhood, you're not taking pictures, are you?
No, no, I'm listening to podcasts. I listen to you sometimes, believe it or not.
Oh, thanks, buddy. You can listen to
Yeah.
this one. It's really nice to see you again. Listen, I'm really happy to have you on the show for a couple reasons. One is you're in the hotbed of Traderville, Alberta, and and you've been very vocal, not just about Danielle Smith's Alberta healthcare scandal, not just Danielle Smith trying to pay Muslim kids to get her reelected. You. It's funny when you say it, right? But you're also part and parcel to what's really going on when it comes to Canadian unity, and you've been an incredible voice. And there's lots to get to in terms of Danielle Smith, begging Donald Trump for help. Election interfering, saying, "Hey, can you just kind of can you stop the tariffs just so Pierre Poilievre can get in? Because if he gets in, then Canada can go the way of the new Americans." And then you've also got her, which is like, she's denying it today, which is absolutely unbelievable. But then we've also got the 51st state rhetoric, and you being from an authoritarian background as a Polish immigrant. What you're seeing in the United States. Want your thoughts on that? But I would love to start with Danielle Smith. How's she doing?
If you look at the coat of arms of Alberta, it says strong and free at the bottom.
Yeah.
But I don't think it meant free for all or free here, have us for free, United States. She sort of misread the motto of the coat of arms.
Yeah.
How is she doing? At any other time, the stuff she pulls off daily would have been an end to a government. Premiers would have to resign, cabinet ministers would have to resign. But our tolerance right now in this world of craziness in politics seems to have risen to the point where, what she does, it's still somehow permissible. So as we're speaking right now, she's actually heading to an airport and she's flying to Florida yet again, and she's partaking in a MAGA a fundraiser for a YouTube channel over there. As a premier of Alberta, with her staff, with security, it's going to cost tens, probably $100,000 for Albertans for her to participate in MAGA events, and people are furious, and she's catching cover stories of all the Alberta newspapers, and seems to sort of not care, and life goes on. So her comments about pausing tariffs against Canada, so Pierre Poilievre can get elected. The press release from staff goes out, and they say it's patriotic. That what she does is proper. Majority of Albertans, and I think it's the case with Canadians, are tuned out. I have good friends, neighbors, who are very astute, intelligent people, but they got to the point where they stopped listening to any kind of news. So I think she's sort of taking advantage of that most Albertans actually don't know what she's doing because they just simply tuned out. They said too much. So she flooded the field to the point where people checked out. And I think that's the strategy. Jason Kenney once, I don't know if he slipped up or he actually meant to share that, but he talked about how flooding the field is a good political tactic. If you let people drink from a hydrant, they will choke and they will stop listening after a while. And that's exactly what she's doing right now.
And then give you your agency. That's the whole idea, right? Like, let's just
That's
kind
right.
of bombard you and get you to put everything down and not fight back, and then give us your agency so you don't have to worry about any of these things and just kind of stand behind us, give us your money, da 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 da. Let's talk about Danielle Smith. And a real quick question: do you think she's a MAGA asset at this point?
Oh, by all means. She I wouldn't go as far into sort of conspiracy theories and accuse her to be a Russian asset or anybody's asset. There are some people who simply are just not very smart. and they say stupid things that they pick up somewhere on the internet, that they read somewhere, and they repeat them, and by being not smart, they become a de facto asset. She started with with praising Putin for attacking Ukraine, saying he had every right to do it, and then she sort of backtracked and said, I didn't know. She claimed to be Cherokee, and then she said, "Oh, I didn't know, I wasn't." She during COVID, all this anti-masking, during the truckers, she promised them that if she becomes a premier, she will give them an amnesty, not knowing that premiers can't do it. So it's simply ignorance. But she's not bashful. There was a credible Canadian reporter that compared her to a political magpie. She picks up shiny objects, and if something sounds good, she thinks it's true, and she sort of just repeats it, right? So I don't think she understands how problematic it is that as a premier of Alberta, on behalf of government of Alberta, hence on behalf of Albertans, she at such a critical political time, she's now attending a fundraiser for a MAGA YouTube broadcaster, a very big broadcaster, who promotes taking over Canada's 51st state. And there is a premier of Alberta appearing as a keynote speaker at their fundraiser. Somehow, it doesn't calculate, or she is so overtly supportive of that agenda that she thinks by doing it overtly, we will think that she's doing it because she's not smart. I don't know, but it's just it's impossible to explain.
Well, it is impossible to explain, but I'm a big fan of history, and history gives you context, and history has receipts that you can kind of build that context around, right? It was what last summer. She is front and center at two Tucker Carlson events. This is the same Tucker Carlson. Pictures with him, pictures with Jordan Peterson, pictures with Conrad Black, pictures with all the baddies.
Hmm.
And then a couple weeks ago, and we've seen Tucker Carlson go full Putin apologist, right, over the past, I would say,
Of course.
year and a
Oh yeah,
half.
he definitely is an asset for sure.
For sure. And so like, we can have the conversation about whether or not she's a useful idiot, which she absolutely is a useful idiot, because if you're a useful idiot for MAGA, you're a useful idiot for Russia. But these are intentional acts of support for that ideology, right? And if you piece together, her support for the invasion of Ukraine, and then piece together the idea she had no idea what she was talking about, and she apologized for it. It's like, I didn't know that. I didn't know Ukraine was its own sovereign territory as a premier of this province. You can't really feign ignorance when the strategy, every time someone like her, any Maple MAGA asset, Russian asset, someone like her, denies having any knowledge of what it is that they talked about, but they just kind of mentioned it. Like, that's not that all pieces put together. It is. You would think, any educated individual would go, "Oh no, she's fully on the authoritarian gobshite truck, and she's also part of this ecosystem." Because that ecosystem, as you and I both know, gets run through all of their different media partners, right wing media partners. And what is she doing right now? To your point, she's going down to the United States, did not go to the first minister's meeting, had nothing to do, joined on Zoom, then gave a list of demands that were so federally jurisdictional that it was ridiculous. And then now she's going to go down to the United States in a time when our sovereignty is at risk, where she's going to hobnob with all the people that made it possible for Trump to get into office, that are talking about how Putin's doing the right thing. Like, explain that to me in terms of whether or not, like, I know you're a fire hose of honesty online, and you're a fire hose of honesty in person. But, like, are you being soft when you say she might be a useful idiot, or when you put those things together, do you not go, she's on somebody's team and it ain't ours?
She is on somebody's team, and it ain't ours. I'll tell you that up front. But the benefit of doubt that I'm giving her is, and I'm not sure if it's the kind of doubt she wants, but I honestly do not believe that she has the mental capacity to formulate, this kind of a plan. She is a useful idiot to others who manipulate her. She is very easy to manipulate. She repeats what the last person said. She has very little historical context. She doesn't understand why things are the way they are. So she is very easy to manipulate. So there are people around her uh, who are not very nice people, but definitely much smarter than she is, who are manipulating her. uh,
Mm.
and they are not only positioning themselves politically but also financially, because she signs off on things that no other premier ever would. This whole scandal that we have that is now up to the tune of $600 million of giving out healthcare contracts and buying fake Tylenol from Turkey. Guess from where? From Dr. Oz's company in Turkey, the famous MAGA Republican, Atabey, the Turkish manufacturer of fake Tylenol, is Oz family's factory in Turkey. So she buys Tylenol for Alberta, which turns out to be useless, and they haven't delivered more than 90% of it. All
And
those
they
things
paid
are
for it up
happening.
front, right? Like 70 million
Paid
up
for it
front.
up front. Paid
Yeah.
some $70 million. They delivered 10%, so about 50 some million dollars is sitting in someone's bank account for nothing. All those deals are being put together, and there are individuals who are flying her in private jets to NHL playoffs. But those are the individuals who get all the contracts for private surgeries in Alberta to the tune of $600 million. Um, it is not of her making. She is not the one sitting there making that master plan. There are others who are taking advantage of her sheer stupidity, ignorance, and making a lot of money on it and positioning themselves politically and furthering other politicians like Trump's and others' narratives. And she is this useful idiot that is enjoying the limelight, and she will go to speak at any conference without understanding what this conference really is all about, as long as she gets invited, because she likes being in the limelight. Sometimes I still think that she thinks she's a radio host, and the more viewers and listeners and the more airtime she gets, the better she is.
Mm.
It doesn't matter what the radio station is. It doesn't matter who the host is. It doesn't matter what the program is all about. As long as she's on the air, she thinks she's somehow relevant, and that's the dangerous part, because her ignorance of what's happening in the world and how intricate things are, is causing not only Alberta but Canada a lot of problems.
Is she a traitor?
Well, traitor is when you actually do something intentionally. I think unintentionally, she is a traitor. What she did with Trump, asking him to pause his tariffs so that Polyev can win. And, there's no other way to interpret it. I know that her supporters try to spin it, counter spin it, but there isn't. Listen to this audio, and her message was clear. Please, Mr. President, pause the tariffs, because those tariffs are actually helping liberals. Their polling is going up and they may win the election, and you want Polyev to win because he is aligned with you. Their message was that simple, that clear. Is it treasonous? Well, it's definitely asking a foreign power to interfere in our Canadian elections by manipulating their foreign policy, right? Does it meet the legal definition of treason? Probably not. But is it immoral? Definitely. Is it un-Canadian? Most definitely. But
Wholly.
it's not the but it's not the first time. She reached out to United States to interfere with Canadian politics before. Her one-on-one meetings with Kevin O'Leary and Trump, without even advising our Canadian embassy in Washington, without global affairs sort of directing her meetings with President Trump. All that is not conducive to what is good for all of Canada. And I have a feeling, through her stupidity, she's actually causing Polyev a lot of problems too. This was not a good launch to a campaign for him, when you have
You
a
think
premier.
so?
Yeah, when you have the second most visible conservative saying that he is most aligned with Trump, that
Yeah.
that is something he doesn't want right now. So, I think she is just a fool that is running after shiny objects and causing everybody a lot of problems. But she is manipulating, and by doing that, she is furthering causes of other people.
Election interference. Here's what she said in a Breitbart interview a couple of days ago that kind of shook the world, to be honest with you, our world anyway. She said, quote, let's have the best person at the table make the argument. I think it's Pierre Poilievre, and I do agree with you that if we have Pierre as our prime minister, then I think there's a number of things that we could do together. Speaking to Breitbart reporter, she's talking about America and Canada. And she's, by the way, no, not an officer of Canada. She's an officer of Alberta. She is in no way entitled to speak to this. She's in no way entitled to make these statements. So let's get back to it. Smith detailed, quote, Pierre believes in development, low energy costs, blah, 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 low taxes. Doesn't believe in any of the woke stuff. There you go. That we've been seeing taking over our politics for the past 5 years. So I would think that there's probably still always going to be areas that are skirmishes or disputes. But I think I would say, on balance, the perspective that Pierre would bring would be very much in sync with, I think, the new direction of America, which is something else when you see the direction of America. And she effectively said, hey, can you do us a favor? Before the tariff war, can you kind of pause things because we need Pierre Poilievre to win? I mean, it was blatant. It was blatant, election interference, begging another country, begging publicly for Donald Trump and America to intercede on her behalf with tariffs, because the tariffs, to your point, are killing Pierre Poilievre because everybody's running towards Mark Carney because he's a fucking adult.
That's right. And so her comment, obviously wasn't thought out. But there is another layer over here, and one can wonder whether she was directed to do that or encouraged to do that, because there is, on one side, there is a benefit to her, because she is better off having Carney in Ottawa than Polyev, because her politics is all about kicking Ottawa. All she wants to do is have a fight with Ottawa. Having Polyev as prime minister and conservative in power is going to make it very awkward for Danielle Smith, with her 6 demands that she handed over to Carney, and she said, if you don't fulfill these 6 demands, we will have a national unity crisis. Well, Polyev, if he was to win this upcoming election, he wouldn't be able to fulfill most of those promises either. So it is much more convenient always for Alberta conservative government to have liberals in Ottawa, because it gives us this sort of foil, and we can build our domestic politics simply on always fighting Ottawa. It's a good distraction, and it's a good explanation why Alberta's government doesn't do more, because it's Ottawa that's always in our way. So maybe there is sort of evil genius in this, and then maybe she is trying to foil to diminish Poilievre's chances of winning, because she probably would, at the end of the day, prefer Carney as prime minister. Politically, it's better for her.
Yeah, of course it is, because she gets to continue to us versus them, right? She gets to continue to tell people in Alberta that they're hosing us. Like, I mean, the lies about equalization and transfer payments, and how I read about it this year. I'm like, I need to understand deeply how this works. And at the end of that reading, I was like, oh my God, Alberta's entire government system lies to their constituents every single day about equalization and transfer payments. Like,
Most
every
Canadians
single
don't
day.
understand equalization. That's the problem, right? So when you look at the numbers, you would a lot of people sort of look at it simplistically and say, "Oh my God, Alberta is paying more." Hence, Ontario and Quebec are living off of the avails of hard work of Albertans. Most people don't understand that transfer payments really work like property taxes. You pay more if your house is bigger, because the value of your house is higher, but the rate, the percentage of the tax is the same. So yes,
People in
we have
Alberta make more money than
we
people
make more
in other
money, so
provinces.
we
Yeah.
pay more taxes.
Yeah.
Hence, more taxes go to federal coffer, right? If we want to be on the receiving end of equalization, all we need is unemployment, or earn less money, or have a smaller house. Using that example, and you will be just fine. But it's simplistic, and it's very difficult to explain to Albertans, the very intricate formula. But if you tell them, look, you pay more than Ontario on average, hence you're feeding them, they're living off of your hard work, it sells. But keep in mind that the current transfer formula has been established by Harper, and it was Harper and Kenney actually who signed off on it. Trudeau just renewed the existing formula. No changes were introduced by Liberals, but facts don't matter, right? They just sort of throw this red meat and
Yeah.
hope that Albertans consume it.
Let's talk a little bit about, we just talked about her trying to help Pierre Polyev. I want to also acknowledge that Pierre Polyev has lost in the neighborhood, depending on the polling that you read. He's lost his entire 30-point lead, which was pretty much standard across the landscape of polling in this country. Polymarket says he's lost over 100 points to Mark Carney. And this is, keep in mind, he's only been the prime minister for what, 11 days, 12 days?
Correct.
They lost all of their polling heat to a leaderless party, right? Because you just removed Justin Trudeau. And I don't want to spend any time on Justin Trudeau. We all had fatigue. We get it. But there's an adult in the room now in Mark Carney. People can clearly see that.
Correct.
And people are starting to and I want your thought on the vibe, but people are starting to really sort of tune in to the fact that, oh my God, you put A next to B. A has a resume and a seriousness about him that says B is wholly untenable when it comes to being the leader of this country. As a politician, former deputy premier of Alberta, have you ever seen anything like this, and what do you attribute it to?
No, it's probably unprecedented. I cannot think of a provincial or federal situation election where a party that's leading so significantly tanks in such a short period of time. But what's causing it? Number one, let's be honest. Pierre Poilievre is not a strong leader. Even CPC party elected him on, I don't know how many ballots they had to go into runoffs to finally select him as a leader. So he wasn't a clear choice of CPC,
And
which
keep in mind,
means
this is with the news this week that India indeed did help him win that
that's
election.
right. That's right. So you're starting with a leader that is, a runoff election winner after I believe it was 12 ballots or something like that. Ridiculous. So number one. Number two, you have a leader who really, as you mentioned, doesn't have a resume. He is a career politician, straight from university as a young man, becomes a politician and has been one for now, what, 25 years, I believe. So sort of no lived experience. But the most critical problem conservatives have is that they based their entire platform and campaign up to a few days ago on Trudeau, F Trudeau, and carbon tax. Now Trudeau's gone and carbon tax is gone, and they're sort of found themselves empty-handed. All the millions of dollars they spent on advertising against those two things are gone. So what do we fight about? And now we have this new issue with United States and tariffs and sovereignty. And Canadians are saying, well, you're not the leader for that. Carney definitely comes with a much better resume, with less baggage, more lived experience, more academic, finance experience. So, as you said, you're comparing two different leaders. If not for the issue with the United States, I think Polyev would have a better chance because he would still sort of fight on divisive domestic issues. He would find wedge issues within Canada. But this issue with Trump is a unifying issue. It's for all of Canada.
Mm.
So these domestic divisive issues have become secondary or maybe even tertiary, and now we will be choosing a prime minister best equipped to challenge United States and best equipped to forge new relationships, maybe with Europe or other parts of the world. Best prime minister who can manage our economy during a very difficult time. And I think, aside from ideology, because I actually am getting quite a few conservatives saying I can't vote for Polyev. They would have a month ago. But the sort of the rational conservatives who are not just simply ideological are starting to shift. So plus we're seeing the NDP vote tank, and all that is going to
Right.
liberals right now,
Yeah.
because again, people just don't see Jagmeet Singh as an individual who can sit side by side with Trump and take him on. um, so, I hate to predict outcomes because anything can change in a day during a election campaign. But I think those are the main reasons.
Yeah.
Conservatives have a problem because if they lose, Polyev will have to step down as a leader, and their benches are so weak that there isn't an heir apparent. When you look at every single MP that they have right now, I cannot see a potential leader. Although I noticed that Kenny has found his Twitter account
Did
or
you
X
see that?
account. Oh yeah, he is. He is back from wherever he was for the last couple of years, and
Yeah.
he's smelling blood. What Kenny
Oh
is
yeah.
really saying is saying we're done. Polyev is done. Liberals will win this election, and I want to come in as a savior. I would just say, Canadians, look at what happened in Alberta during Kenny time, and do you want that on a national scale?
I go back to him trying to put gas in his truck. Like something so simple like that, where it took him 20 minutes to figure out he had the wrong nozzle. It was diesel, didn't have the diesel nozzle, couldn't get it in,
But
couldn't get it out.
this was funny, but that's what happens to guys like Kenny and Polyev, who in high school become members of the Conservative Youth Association. In university, they become activists on conservative issues. When I would say normal guys and women, study as little as they can and go to parties and find boyfriends and girlfriends. These guys were attending political meetings, and then the moment they graduate,
Winners.
they get elected. They get elected and they become caucus researchers, and
Yeah.
so this is Kenny and Polyev. They're exactly the same from that perspective.
You
But
know, you know, but can I just, and I want to interject because I just finished interviewing a guy named Mark Bory who wrote a book called Ripper. It's the story, the making of Pierre Polyev, and I had a chance to read it this last week, and we had a tremendous interview. You can watch it on my Substack if you like. But to your point, he really reiterated that the making of Pierre Polyev was in those university
oh sure,
rallies and with all the other incels like Kenny, who grew up resenting life, became weapons of, career politicians and the rich conservative elite. They would go to these universities, fill them full of angry propaganda, they'd fire them up. And that's traditionally why we have guys like Pierre Polyev, is because of those, as you pointed out, everybody else in universities ripping bongs and heading down to the den at the University of Calgary to get hammered on a Friday night, going tobogganing in your underwear. These guys were literally having debates with each other in like, university libraries about
that's
what
right.
was really important when it came to neoconservative values.
And there are a number of those individuals in the federal caucus. In my writing, Michael Cooper is another one.
He's the
So
he and I, it's a toss up between Cooper and Genuous as to who the creepiest
that's
conservative
right, but they're sort of,
is.
there's that same makeup, right? You define them very well. That's who they are, and that's very damaging to conservatives. So I think Kenny wants to step up. Kenny Kenny really is the reason why we are where we are in Alberta. Politically, because when I was with the Progressive Conservative Party, our caucus was a bit of a compromise. We had the ultra right wingers, but we also had sort of liberals in our caucus, and then there was compromises going on and some form of balancing. So we were like a melting pot of conservatism. What Kenny did is he merged the Wild Rose, which was the ultra right party in Alberta, with the progressive conservatives, and he weaponized the ultra right wingers. He started giving in to the issues of sort of religious issues, private schools, abortions, and stuff like that. He gave them power, not realizing that he will lose control over them. And when he resigned, he actually said that the crazies took over the asylum, but he's the one who brought them in and weaponized them, hoping that he can use them for votes and then somehow get rid of them. But it's like sleeping with fleas, with dogs. You catch fleas and you can't get rid of it. And he would do the same thing, federally. He would probably look at guys like Maxime Bernier and try to bring his people in, unite the conservatives. Because all it really is with people like Danielle Smith and Jason Kenney and Michael Cooper and the others is about winning. And they will do whatever it takes to win an election. Why? Because they have this vision of the world. That's why they always refer to themselves as a movement, not a political party, a movement. They have this vision of the world, what the world should be like. And that means that end justifies the means. If we have to bring in crazies, if we have to do crazy things, it's worth it, because at the end of the day, we're fulfilling God's work, and anything is worth the price for that, because we will make we will finally deliver on what it is that it was always meant to be. There's almost a sort of messianic, messaging in what
Yeah,
they
there
do.
is.
They do believe that they have been given an insight into how humanity should govern itself, and they're willing to pay the price for it.
Well, I'm apostate from that religion. It's not, and again, we'll park that religious conversation. But I grew up in that. Like I grew up in Alberta, went to the University of Calgary, went to high school at Prairie High School in Three Hills, super evangelical Bible Institute. And so I've part and parcel to all the propaganda, and I understand it. I've read the Bible back to front, Old Testament, New Testament, Pentateuch, all of it. I can recite most of it still, which is a curse, really. That's why my brother doesn't want to talk to me about it. And important to note, every single one of the people that you just talked about that is taken up arms with the Conservative Party of Canada, they are radical to the point where they've made a commitment, a lifelong commitment to a religion. That religion is evangelicism, or Mennonites, hardcore evangelical Christians, that dictates that they are warriors for Jesus Christ, and they are ordained to do his work, to turn the government into a government that is run by Christians and people who share that ideology. So to your point, when they swore an oath to, uphold the laws of Canada, to uphold the laws of Alberta, to protect the citizens of Alberta, that oath comes second all the fucking time.
Correct.
It doesn't matter what it is. That first
Correct.
oath is no. My oath is to eternal salvation and being in the fold of, my Lord and Savior, and everything else comes after that. That includes the people I just swore this fake oath to. So to your point, it's not just messianic. They truly do believe they're on a religious mission like the fucking Knights Templar.
They do, and they don't recognize the important concept of the division between church and state, right? I'll give you an example. The MP you just referred to
And they want
from
the state out of the church, but they want the church to take care of the state.
That's right. So they believe that a lot of services in our society should be delivered by churches, like social services and all that. That is the role of church, and we all should belong to a church, and hence that's how we would avail ourselves with those services. But just to give you an example, the MP you just made a reference to from Edmonton, from Sherwood Park, what's his name? Geranius, Janius,
Genuous, Garnet
Genuis.
Genuous.
So
Yeah.
last week he was handing out
His
King
wife's not allowed to
Charles.
lead the house, by the way. Just to let you
That's
know.
right, and he
Yeah.
was handing out King Charles coronation medals, which were bestowed upon Canadians, and every MP had several to give to his constituents. Well, he was doing it in his church, and I don't imagine everybody who received a medal from him had to be a member of his church. So he was de facto forcing people to go to a church to receive a medal, where this is a matter of state. This is a matter of the royal family. It should be done somewhere in a public place. But no, they just don't see anything wrong with that, and that sort of paints the way they think about policy and about the interaction with their constituents and what the role of government should be. And that's why we are where we are. You see the same thing in United States. There is the Republican Party, evokes God and the Bible. For God's sakes, Donald Trump printed his own Bible. That's his fundraiser. So this definitely plays into
$69.99, by the way.
there you
$69.99. I think. Yeah,
go.
it's a good deal. He and
Good.
Lee Greenwood get to split the profits, just so you know. I just wanted
How
to
good is
throw
that?
that.
So,
Um,
this plays in Alberta politics, and obviously our conservatives are tapping into it.
Yeah, populism, religious populism. I want to shift a little bit because we've only got a few minutes left.
Right.
Thomas Lukaszuk is our guest, Polish immigrant. You came here under the cover of darkness and escaped really a communist country, part of the Warsaw Pact, Poland, prior to it being de-Russified. We are obviously witnessing what's going on. You're witnessing what's going on with Trump, Putin, ganging up on Ukraine. You're witnessing the same authoritarian leanings starting to make their way into the American judicial system, all three levels of government. You're witnessing, Pete Hegseth on Signal chats like a kakistocracy of religiosity. when you look at what's going on in the United States and the creep up into Canada, the MAGA creep up into Canada, which is really a fascist creep that is highly supported by Russia. You're incredibly familiar with the talking points, still very close with the Polish government, and big ups to Poland and Mr. Tusk for taking a very strong stand. I fucking love it. I love the Polish people. What do you see? What do you see when it comes to what you've experienced? And how would you explain to a Canadian prior to voting for a guy like Pierre Poilievre, knowing what we're watching come up from the United States, the context behind who, what countries and ideologies and that axis of evil that is currently supporting the United States, what do you say to a Canadian voter who's like, you know what, I don't think Pierre Poilievre is going to be that bad?
Yeah, see, as Canadians, we're blessed because of the fact that the major wars, the last two major wars, were not fought on our land; they were fought in Europe. And even though Canadians, valiantly participated in those wars almost from day one, we still didn't have that firsthand experience of what fascism and communism looks like. We sort of studied it more from a theoretical perspective. There are the similarities between what's happening right now and what happened in the early 30s when Hitler was coming to power are overwhelming. As a matter of fact, it's the same playbook to a minutia. Mussolini described fascism as a unification between state and business. And when those two unite and form a power over the people, that's fascism. Well, nowhere is it seen better when a president of the United States being sworn in during his inauguration, and five of the richest Americans are there, and that richest American virtually is running the government right now. I'm referring to Elon Musk. So you have this unification, and sort of on a symbolic level, there's a picture of Hitler launching auto making companies with then the richest Germans, Porsche and VW, and now you have in front of White House Trump launching Tesla with Elon Musk and buying one. The pictures are almost identical. These are color, and with Tesla, those are black and white with German cars. So you see this sort of repetition of history in great detail. And the irony of it all is that actually dictatorial governments always came to power through democracy. They always got elected in. It's not like there was a coup and military takeover. Hitler came to power because he got democratically elected. Mussolini came to power because he was elected, and the list goes on and on. Because they're populists and they somehow fooled the population, convinced them that they should vote for them. And then the moment they become leaders, they dismantle democratic institutions like courts and parliaments and become autocratic. So what we're seeing in the United States is a slow development of an authoritarian government, and what we see is a collapse of democratic institutions. But we also look at the United States from a little bit of a short-term perspective, and we think of United States as a beacon of democracy. The Statue of
Mm-hmm.
Liberty that everybody runs towards. We look at the United States as the defender of downtrodden countries. That there's always states that will come and defend us. That's how I viewed the United States when I was in communist Poland. We hope that Ronald Reagan will come and save us. But that is a distorted view of the United States, because when you look actually at the American foreign policy over a longer period of time, you will find that Trump actually is doing now what U.S. always has been. So, for example, World War One. United States couldn't care less about World War One. It took him years to actually get involved in World War One, but World War Two is a better example. Churchill, much like Zelensky, was coming to the White House begging for
Egging.
help.
Yeah.
And US said, no, we're not interested. We have this beautiful ocean between us. What do we care about your war in Europe? Churchill came second time and actually wanted to just borrow American ships, both civilian and military ships, for convoys. And Americans said, no, that's your war. You worry about it. If not for Pearl Harbor, if Japanese didn't bring the war to Americans, Americans would have never joined World War II,
Mm-hmm.
because they had the same policy. Defend yourself. Who cares about Europe? We have an ocean between us. It doesn't affect us. And then when you had the Conference of Yalta after World War II, Americans were happy to sign off Poland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Czech Republic. Everybody say, "Here, Stalin, you have it, you control it. We'll build a Berlin Wall, divide Europe on half," and they satisfied Stalin, who was an aggressor.
Who
By
went on to
doing
kill hundreds of millions of people after that, by the
that's
way.
right. No different than Hitler. So, this sort of pure, innocent vision of United States that they're always on the side of good and defending those who need help, is really not the case. Americans sort of assumed that role after World War II, after Yalta Conference, when they became allies of Western Europe, not Eastern Europe, Western Europe, and that's when NATO was created and all that. But now we're seeing the United States actually reverting back into its old channel,
Mm-hmm.
where they want to be isolationist, where they see the world on transactional basis. If we can make money here, if it furthers our selfish interests, we will get engaged. But if we have nothing to gain here, just because it's the right thing to do, we're not getting involved.
Mm-hmm. No, you bring up a great point. And it's funny you talk about recency bias the last 50, 60 years, the effort that's gone into painting the United States as a hero nation state and that shining city on a hill. They have never been. Maybe they've given
No,
people the impression that they have been. And where it really I love educating myself as to history because we don't get that education because of our recency bias and literally governments try to educate the truth out of different experiences that we've all had. Turning Point, The Bomb in the Cold War on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen it,
no, I
but
haven't.
in great detail lays out exactly what you're talking about, that America has almost always been an isolationist state.
It
America
has.
has always meddled in taking over governments. The Dulles brothers did a fabulous job of destroying countries like Guatemala. And they failed, by the way. Every single time they did this, they have failed. Every time they've tried to cock up some kind of war. And this is what America has done. This is why the CIA was created. The CIA is literally created to go and destroy other countries and gather information on other countries and say what you want about Putin being a terrorist. And he is, and I hope he dies. But I mean, you're looking legitimately at a country that has given you the impression there's something over the past 50, 60 years, which they have never been. And so, to your point, to be able to see it from how you grew up and then to look at America through this lens and understand that context and history for a lot of people that don't have the ability to critically think or do that research, they're gobsmacked today. You're like,
They
what
are.
happened to
They
America?
are. That's right. Because without historical context, this is sort of hard to believe. This seems like a betrayal. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
our best friend has become a foe. How can that be? But what we're really seeing is realigning of geopolitical alliances. We have now three superpowers. Measured differently, but nonetheless superpowers: China, Russia, and United States, and there appears to be jousting for control. The planet is being divided into three, and there seems to be also a great deal of collaboration between Putin and Trump, more probably than we know, and there is a sort of unwritten agreement that Putin, you do what you want in your backyard, and we will not interfere and cause you harm, but do the same for us. So when we are staking claims over Panama Canal or Greenland or Canada.
Canada. Yeah.
You notice how silent Putin is about it, and Putin
My
should be
word.
speaking up because Greenland and the Northern Passage is of interest to him. Panama Canal is of interest to him, yet he's sitting quiet because United States is not causing him problems as he is interfering in his own sphere of influence. And they're both watching China. How will China respond to this? Because China is watching this very carefully. If Putin gets away with Ukraine, which it seems like Trump wants him to get away with Ukraine, that is a lesson for China on how to deal with Taiwan. Because how can we interfere with China taking over Taiwan when we don't interfere with Russia taking over Ukraine? So these are three superpowers that are watching each other, but the collaboration right now is evident between the White House and Kremlin.
Last question. You think Trump invades Canada?
This would have been the dumbest question of a decade about
I
three
feel dumb
months ago,
asking it. Yeah, I feel dumb
right?
asking it.
But don't, because I get asked that question. Actually, I do a lot of interviews in Europe. I just did one in UK a couple days ago, and I was asked exactly the same question. Right now, I would be a fool saying not a chance. I think there is a chance. I certainly hope that there are checks and balances and mechanisms within the United States government and their bureaucratic structures that would prevent that from happening. But if that decision was left to Musk and Trump and JD Vance, I think it is a possibility. But while we're discussing that, I think that should formulate a background of on how we now think about Canadian position in the world and Canadian defense. And I strongly feel that Canada should tie its future more so to Europe than it ever has before. I
Yeah.
believe that we need to formulate military structures outside of NATO. That are defensive. Europe is talking about forming a European Union army or some form of contingent like this. I think Canada must be part of that. And I also believe that our new prime minister, whoever it will be, has to develop a very robust Canadian defense program that's both in manufacturing arms in Canada, but definitely increasing our military capacity and increase our budget on military spending very significantly. And I'm talking about investing. This is not spending, this is investing, because a lot of this actually can create jobs in Canada. But that is something very important. And you know what? As much as I have been a big advocate of non-proliferation of nuclear arms, because it was the right thing to do then, unfortunately, that policy will have to change, and that is something that Canada should be looking at as well.
We need the bomb. Yeah, I don't disagree, as crazy as that sounds too. Thomas Lukaszuk, former Deputy Premier of Alberta, is our guest today. Really appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk to us today, giving us some insight. Thanks for doing this. Sorry about your
Thanks,
premier, dude.
Dean.
All right, man.
Well, she got democratically elected. See, that's how it works.
Yeah. Well, let's democratically unelect her. That would be really nice
Amen.
for your province. All right,
Thanks,
pal.
Dean.
Talk to you soon.
Take it.
Thomas Lukaszuk. Give him a follow on Twitter. Is where you can find him. Good guy. Great context for a lot of people. When it comes to how the machine works, the Maple MAGA machine works, right? You got some premiers that are captured. You got some leaders of the opposition that are captured. They see bright lights, big city. Character, friends. You want to vote for people with character. Maple MAGA has none of it. You're welcome. Have a great day. Don't forget, everything we do you can find on our Substack. Everything I do you can find on my Substack as well, deanblundell.substack.com. You can be a paid or free subscriber. Doesn't matter to me. Just really appreciate the fact you took some time with us. Paid is always, always, always gratefully accepted because, hey, it's the ultimate compliment when someone says, yeah, I'd pay to listen to you talk. I'd pay to read your stuff. And you can read our latest Maple MAGA Trojan horse, Pierre Poilievre Unmasked. You can also, Unmasked. Ooh, Freudian slip. Which is on my Substack as well. And you can check out the 5 Stack, which is a daily top 5 stories that we do with Zev Shalev, former CBS Today Show producer, and Olga Lautman from time to time from the Trump Tyranny Tracker. She is incredible. She had a story go viral. Kinzinger the other day was like, I need your story. She's a heater. So go check out the 5 Stack podcast as well. And of course, anywhere you get your fine podcasts, including Apple and Spotify, YouTube, I could give a shit. Just go to my Substack and give us a follow. That'd be great. Have a great day, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time with us. Hope it made sense to you, and hopefully you learned something and had a little bit of fun today. Talk to you soon. Bye.